Tracy.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar, NIGP Certified Procurement Professional, connecting certification to your learning and career aspirations. Today's presenters include CEO Rick Grimm, along with Diane Daly, the Director of Certification Programs, with special guest Tracy Garcia, Principal Contract Officer for the City of Tucson. If at any time during the webinar you need tech support, please send me a direct chat. Remember to engage with your peers by making sure you have your chat option selected to everyone. During the webinar, please submit any questions you have to the chat or Q&A, and we will take those as we go through the presentation. Rick, would you like to go ahead and get us started?
I would be honored to, Justin. Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon here, at least on the East Coast. Neil, thank you so much for putting your post about hoping everyone in Florida is doing okay. You know, this is all about a community coming together. This is a kind of a personal issue for me because I grew up in Miami, Florida, and so I have experienced hurricanes. And it's really, really good to see so many of you that have been able to come in from the Sunshine State and say, you know, I want to listen to what's happening with this webinar, despite all the disruptions that are going on in your life, particularly thinking about our friends in Southwest Florida. You know, it's all been about disruptions, right? We've had these major supply chain shortages that happened during COVID, where you were scrambling first to get, you know, the PPEs, and now you're having, you know, struggling with getting microchips and OEM parts. It's one disruption after another. The disruption with COVID is starting to disappear, but I think that the disruption that we're facing now is about talent. It's about how we are being impacted by the Great Resignation, as people have decided, hey, you know what, my financial portfolio looks pretty healthy, and therefore I think it's time for me to retire. In addition to the baby boomers retiring, that we have a shrinking workforce in the generations coming after them, which is creating this real challenge with a competitive job market, and also a focus in on how do we provide flexibility in the workplace as a benefit. Now, what does this have to do with this conversation? Well, the title of this is really, we are going to focus in on the professional certification, the NIGP Certified Procurement Professional. But the CPP was always built within the context of a larger program that provides opportunities for you to grow in your career. So, by the way, if you, as we go through this webinar, you realize, you know, maybe the CPP is not where I wanted to be right now. I'm also going to talk to you about other ways in which you can get credentialing that really elevates your career goals, because this is the opportune time, based on these talent shortages, to really focus in on what your next direction is in your career. Matter of fact, I really do believe that we're at that critical crossroad. And the question for you today is, where will your journey take you? Now, I think back, you know, Grimm's fairy tales, right? Haha, because I've lived with that all my life. But there's you know, if you remember this particular, it's not a fairy tale, but of course it is it's a great story about Alice in Wonderland and that Cheshire cat. And so, you know, thinking about this a little bit, Alice says to the Cheshire cat, will you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here? And the Cheshire cat says, well, that really depends a good deal on where you want to get to. And Alice says, you know, I don't much care where I go. And then the Cheshire cat says, it doesn't make any difference which way you go. And I ask you today, as we think about this opportunity for professional certification, is where do you want to go with your professional career? Because the reality is our workforce is rapidly changing. There's different requirements for both recruitment and retention, and the challenges that are happening in that with a shrinking workforce. And we're finding public sector organizations are competing for talent like they have never done before. And so the question for you is, are you intentional? Have you a game plan for mapping your career path? Because, you know, if you don't care, it really doesn't make any difference which road you go. But if you do care, and we hope that you do care, then NIGP really is that trusted advisor that helps you through the Pathways program and through our Pathways Concierge program to show you the way for not only professional certification, but ways in which to learn and to obtain credentials. So let me begin by asking, where are you in your career journey? Are you new to procurement, or are you accomplished leader, or are you retired, or are you something else? Justin's putting up the poll. If you just respond to that, it really helps Diane and I as we frame this discussion for the next 75 minutes.
And we'll give everyone 5 more seconds to get the response in. All right, and here are results.
Okay, so by the way, folks, you are a little different than what we have seen in the past. Most of the people, when we've done attendees, when we've done the webinars, have really kind of been in that emerging accomplished leader. But several of you are really new to procurement, 1 out of 5. And about a third of you are in that competency development phase. That's kind of the sweet spot of this conversation today, because it really is about looking where your career journey is and how Pathways will help you in that roadmap. Because what Pathways was designed to do is to link that your career with credentialing options through an integrated system. So it's connecting learning with credentialing. And that's what we do with professional certification and other options that you have available to you, particularly those that are just starting out and thinking about, where do I begin this journey? Where do I begin this roadmap? Everything that we have done at NIGP with related to Pathways is focused on this procurement competency framework. And it's on 7 major focus areas, beginning with strategy, policy, legislation, sourcing, contract administration, and coming up through business principles. The public procurement competency framework is embedded in all the learning that we provide, and it's embedded in the professional certification that we're going to talk about this afternoon. And it's anchored actually on a piece of research that was done probably 2016, 2017, that really was focused in on what are the competencies that individuals in public procurement need in order to be successful in the marketplace. And this piece of research was commissioned by the Volcker Alliance. Paul Volcker was chair of the Federal Reserve Fund. And what Mr. Volcker recognized, that we recognize today, is that $4.3 trillion, that's 4.3 trillion with a T dollars, run through you and your colleagues in state and local and federal procurement every year. And by the way, the slight majority of that $4 trillion is running through you in state and local governments, which would include K-12, special taxing districts, etc. So you can see why developing competencies and developing your skills is so essential to the success of the communities that you serve. So when we think about the 7 focus areas, we have built out an area for modular learning, and you can see them right here. There's 33 competencies that are part of it. So rather than telling you as a new person coming in to the organization, you need to take all these 33 competencies, some of which may not be relevant to where your journey is today. What we've done is we've built micro-learning, smaller chunks of learning that are really relevant to the work that you're doing today. And then through Pathways, we can begin to build what your learning journey would look like. So for example, if you are just new to procurement, maybe it's really just these 5 areas that we're showing. Mission and public benefit. Why is public sector different than the private sector? About ethics, integrity, transparency. That's a foundation of the work we do. And then requirements planning, sourcing, contracting, and contract management performance. And then as we grow in our profession, we start to develop even more competencies. So like a third of you were in this competency development area. You can see the map starts to expand. It picks up from what we had before, and then we begin to build other micro-credentials with it. Now, I mentioned this over, if you look on the far right side of the screen, this competency development that you see here, these courses, really get you connected to the Public Procurement Associate designation. Now, we'll talk about that because that is one of the eligibility pathways for your CPP. So keep that in mind. But as we grow in our profession, again, here's what leaders would probably take in terms of relevant content. The bottom line is there's a lot of opportunities. It's all about choice. It's about where your career is going. It's like asking the Chester cat to Alice, where do you want to go? And each of you has a different pathway that's important to you. But it's also important that you have abilities to earn credentials, micro credentials, big credentials, based on where your career goals are. So there's competency badges and certificates and designations and specializations. And of course, today we'll focus on certification. Beginning at the fundamental level, when you think of these 33 competency badges, you can think about taking a class on mission and public benefit. And there's a little assessment at the end. And when you complete that assessment, you get a badge. You get a competency badge, digital badge that you can place on all levels of social media. So here's an example of a competency badge for mission and public benefit, ethics, integrity, transparency, etc. But think about taking those competency badges and bundling them into course certificates. So that's another option. Again, what we wanted to talk about today is your options that are available to you in your journey, in addition to professional certification. So you could get a core certificate that is a combination of mission and public benefit, enabling regulations and compliance, ethics, integrity, and transparency, and legislation and legal environment. As a matter of fact, NIGP has bundled 5. You're seeing 3. We have bundled 5 of these learning modules into a core certificate. That may be part of where your journey is today. It's up to you. This is your choice. It's your career. Or think about bundling core certificates into a designation. So we have the combination of the core certificates on planning and on sourcing and on strategy and policy, and they bundle to create the Public Procurement Associate designation. And as we work through the webinar, you'll learn from Diane that designation is one of the pathways for eligibility on certification. Or you could do specializations. We have 2 that are shown here: construction procurement, technology procurement. Our newest specialization, really, which is really kind of to delve down into some specific information and competencies within a knowledge track. We recently launched one on buying with federal grants. So again, lots of flexibility, lots of options for you to build a learning journey based on where you see your career going. And then today we're going to talk about the certification. Now, the certification's been around, where first exams were done in pilot exams and then in August of 2020. So we're just crossing over on our second full year. And in those 2 years, during COVID, 945 recipients from 45 states and 5 Canadian provinces. It's a real celebration. Picture you're seeing here are the individuals that had received their certification in the last year and then were with us for the in-person conference forum in Boston in August of 2022. So again, I know I'm going to really emphasize this to a great degree, but there are credentials that you could earn regardless of where in your career goals. And that's why we asked that question initially. Are you new to procurement? Are you in competency development? Are you an accomplished leader? Or you're a competency development? There is something for everyone. And that's why NIGP wanted to build certification within the context of a larger umbrella to provide you many, many options depending upon where you want to go. Now, we're going to talk about certification. I'm going to give you kind of a framework on the certification program. But when we get into the details of how you do eligibility, how you do your application, Diane Daly is going to take over from there. But one of the things that we want to talk about with certification is to really understand where you are coming from in terms of formal education. Do you have a master's or a bachelor's or associate's degree or no degree at all? Or are you certified as a CPPO or CPPB from the Universal Public Procurement Certification Council? So if you could just respond to that quick poll, we would appreciate it.
And we'll give everyone 5 more seconds. And here results.
Okay, so just a slight under a majority, 49% bachelor's degree, and another 20% in the master's. So basically about 70% of you are in a bachelor's or a master's. You see about the next category really is individuals that don't have a degree at all. And then a smaller percentage of those who are currently certified. The reason why we ask this question is each of these areas that you see on the screen are ways in which you can gain eligibility to sit for your CPP. So this really kind of helps us frame the conversation for the next 45 to 60 minutes. Let's talk briefly then about why this program is unique. Well, the first thing is that it really is targeted to mid to executive level leaders. Now, notice we're using the word leaders, not managers, because what leaders do is they could influence or motivate or innovate. They may have some authority, even though they may not be leading a group with kind of a supervisory or management responsibility. So it really is targeted at that mid to executive level leader. It's based on that public procurement competency framework that I mentioned before, that research that was funded by the Volcker Alliance. Everything that we do in Pathways, including the certification program, is anchored in that framework. And the exam is based on 43 competency statements that come from the competency framework. We'll talk about that a little bit in the program. It's also focused on competencies. It's not about what you know, but it's how you apply what you know to measure not only your knowledge, but your skills and your behaviors and your performance within those 43 competency statements. It's also integrated with NIGP's family of offerings. As I mentioned before, certification is not a standalone. It's integrated with Pathways so that you have a holistic approach to learning and credentialing. It ties into NIGP's research program. It ties in to NIGP's workforce development program and career pathways concierge program. And then is also linked to a single sign-on database. So if you are a member of NIGP, you're using your same sign-on to get not only into your member areas, but also into your certification areas. And when you are taking programs, classes like this webinar, it automatically posts this learning activity as you think about recertification. So lots of power that's available to you because the CPP is integrated with NIGP's family of offerings. Now, when the program was first developed and then turned over to an independent certification commission, a few things that were really important. We wanted to focus on competencies. We wanted to make sure the exam is rigorous. So now 100% of the people that take the exam do not pass. It is rigorous, but is also meaningful. I also want to put, I mentioned this, I use this word frequently about providing some flexibility that's available to you. We also wanted to take a very comprehensive view of all the work that we do in public procurement. It's not just about knowing sources of source selection and how to do contract management, but it's in the larger piece of kind of those soft skills that we bring to the workplace that make us successful: leadership, business continuity, strategy. That fifth one is really important to us. As we built this program, we wanted to make sure that we were following those best practices that are developed by ANSI and the International Standards Organization. And why is that important to us? Because we know it's important to you. When you're developing bids and tenders and RFPs, oftentimes you reference a standard that's important as a vendor bids on your products and services. And so in likewise, we want to make sure that we're following those best practices for credentialing programs. And we'll mention that again throughout this this program. The way that this was developed is we actually took the public procurement competency framework. We brought together a group of your peers, subject matter experts, who developed a survey, and that survey went out to a large number of public procurement professionals. And we asked them to assess the frequency and importance of those activities performed, hey, by that target audience, the mid to senior level leaders. Now, this practice analysis is used to inform our independent certification commission on what are the eligibility requirements and what is the exam content. In other words, this is not a group of people who sit around and say, well, what do you think, what questions should be asked? They actually come from or informed by that practice analysis that was done by you. Now, one thing to mention is that we're going to go through in pretty good detail kind of the 5 questions that are asked about certification. But the key really is for you to look at the Certification Handbook, because it's going to cover a much larger array of issues. Like we're not going to be talking about appeals and those areas in this webinar. We don't have enough time. But go to the Certification Handbook. It's available for you. It's 24/7 because it's a digital copy. So you go to the NIGP website, you click on certification, and you can download a copy of that Certification Handbook. I think it's really important. So before we turn it over to Diane, just one last thing is what we call ears to peers, because Diane and I can talk about the value of certification till the cows come home, right? But really, you want to look at your peers. Stephanie Dion, who is up in Winnipeg and Manitoba. She's Director of Excellence in the province of Manitoba. She says, and look at the words that she's saying, is the certification is inclusive and the content promotes critical thinking that is essential to your profession. By that, she's saying, not only do you have to have the knowledge, but you need to know how to apply the knowledge in that situation by thinking what's the best solution given the circumstances. Or Travis Pierce, who is at Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority. He says it's empowered him with the confidence and expertise that he needs to drive and deliver results. And therefore, he's encouraging all of his procurement professionals to seek the certification because it's about competence, it's about knowledge, it's about skills that you need to excel as a leader. And today we really are privileged to have with us Tracy Garcia, who is a principal contract officer with the city of Tucson, Arizona. Like Travis Pierce, Tracy works with a gentleman by the name of, oh, help me, Tracy. I can't believe I'm not remembering your boss's name.
Nathan Dow.
Oh, Nathan Dow. Thank you very much. Hey, it's just getting old. Now, Nathan Dow is a real champion, not only for the city of Tucson, but for professional development and certification. He was really at the beginning of the phase of saying, this is not only important to me as a procurement leader, but I really want my team to embrace the value of certification. So we're grateful, Tracy, to have you here today. And if you could just kind of share a couple of minutes about why the certification is important to you in your career journey, and then maybe a couple of hints about how you prepared for taking the exam.
Thank you for having me today. I'm glad that I could share this experience with everybody. Mostly, I know when I started with procurement, I asked my leadership team to kind of treat me with kid gloves and train me as if I were a kindergartner, because I want to really understand all of the aspects of procurement from the very beginning, so I could figure out my own way of understanding it and applying it to the work I do. When I started with procurement, everything seemed very overwhelming, and I felt like it was something that I wasn't going to grasp on my own. I've learned through taking the webinars and some of the classes and going through the certification process that I'm learning more than I think I do. I was able to apply a lot of the knowledge that I've gained from my organization into the study practices that I've done through the certification process. I know my organization values having the certification and the knowledge about procurement. So going through the process of studying for the exam really helped me in the confidence in my abilities in procurement. And my goal is to become part of the management team and organization, and learning as much as I can about procurement is what's going to get me there. Like you say, Nathan really does value NIGP and the values and guiding principles of procurement. So being able to get the certification is what's allowing me to promote and to motivate my coworkers to do the same.
Yeah, did you ever think about that when you first started out in procurement, you would be where you are today?
Definitely.
Yeah, we all
It
fell into
seems
public
so
procurement, right?
overwhelming. Yes,
Yeah,
very much so.
yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you prepared for the exam, because I know that's usually top of mind for folks.
I know preparing for the exam, definitely getting the resource guide and being able to go through that helped to make me understand what the expectation was for the exam. And then joining multiple study groups is what really helped me the most. To be able to join a study group of my peers to gain their knowledge, and to join a study group of people from all across the country was even more beneficial, because it's surprising how different procurement can be in other areas of the country, and gaining that knowledge from people who do it slightly differently based on their geographics is very beneficial to anybody taking the exam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we'll talk about some of those tools later on in the webinar, but I appreciate you mentioning that there's not just one thing that you can do. There's multiple ways in which you can prepare for the exam. Yeah. Anything else that you'd like to share with the audience this afternoon, Tracy?
I just think that this truly has been a great certification. It has taught me a lot just through the study process itself, and it's definitely opened doors for me. So look forward to learning more and recertifying so that I can keep my knowledge up to date.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. And it was the perfect segue into what we were talking about early on, that the certification is a pathway. It's not the only, it's not the beginning and the end. You know, I've been around just a couple years, and in the old days, you get certification and you stop learning. And I would suggest that certification is kind of in that midpoint that helps you in your career and that journey, because we all kind of fell into public procurement. This is an opportunity for us to shine. So, Tracy, thank you so very much for being with us this afternoon. Please give my best to Nathan and the team. City of Tucson is a beacon for the public procurement profession, and we're really glad that you're a part of the team and you spent some time with us this afternoon. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
And
Absolutely.
Tracy, I was just going to say, Tracy, if you wouldn't mind putting your email in the chat box, just in case anyone would like to reach out to you after the webinar, we'd really appreciate it.
Of course, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you,
you.
Diane, for mentioning that.
Sure.
One more poll. What are your biggest concerns about certification? Yeah, and you can multiple choices here, so you could choose 2 or 3. Is it about cost? Is it about eligibility? Is it something else? Just take maybe quick 30 seconds and indicate those for us. Again, this helps us tailor the webinar for you.
And we'll give 5 more seconds. And here are results.
Okay, geez, about 2/3 of your time required to prepare and study. Not a big surprise. We have found that in other webinars. Next one is the costs, application, exam fees, and then we'll talk about relevance. We're going to talk about all of these issues, but this really helps us focus in on the key aspects that are important to you. You're spending your time with us. We want to make sure this is valuable time. At this point, I turn the program over to a colleague, Diane Daly, who has been with NIGP now for 3 years and has a depth and wealth of experience in developing professional certification programs for probably 2 or 3 decades, Diane. I think that would be fair to say. And the reason why Diane and I team tag this is that I can talk about why this certification programs exist and what's its foundation and how does NIGP help you study. But the certification is independent of NIGP. It doesn't report to the NIGP board. There's a separate commission that manages the certification program. And Diane, therefore, becomes your point of contact on anything related to certification. There's some very, very strict firewalls. I can't get into your records that are in certification. Only Diane and her team can do that. So Diane is here for you. She is really does a great job with customer service, is always available for you. She and Lauren do a great job. And so Diane, I'm going to ask you to kind of take it away and talk about the 5 big questions we see from the webinars.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Yeah, Rick, and it's 3 decades. I am, certification for life, let's say. So let's take a look at the big questions. Are you eligible? How do you apply? How do you schedule your appointment? Preparation, 61% of you. And then how do you maintain your certification? So let's take a look at eligibility first. We have 6 eligibility pathways. They include formal college, university education and/or relevant work experience, or there's a pathway specifically for those who are currently certified CPPOs or CPPBs. No informal training hours are required, no prerequisites. So let's take a look. We start with Pathway A. Pathway A has the highest education requirement and the lowest amount of work experience. So for Pathway A, you have to have a graduate degree that is specifically public administration, public policy, supply chain, procurement, or economics. And with that, just 24 months of relevant work experience. And I'm going to define relevant work experience in a minute instead of doing it every pathway. So that's Pathway A, graduate degree specific, 24 months. And then Pathway B, you'll see that's now a bachelor's degree, any area, and a graduate level certificate from a college or university in public administration, public policy, supply chain, or procurement. So both of those educations are required. And then the work increases to 36 months. All right. So Pathway C, very popular pathway, bachelor's degree, any discipline. It looks like 49% of you are there, and 48 months of relevant work experience. Then Pathway D, which is really, really cool. Your education can either be a 2-year post-secondary diploma, so an associate's degree, or the NIGP Public Procurement Associate designation. So we are finding there are candidates who do not have a college degree, but they're completing the NIGP Public Procurement Associate designation, and then they fall into Pathway D. They're eligible under D with 72 months of relevant work experience. The next pathway we'll look at, so we want to remember 72 months here for Pathway D. If we go and we look at the next pathway, Pathway E, no college degree at all required. And it increases to 96 months. So the difference between Pathway D and Pathway E is 72 months to 96 months. And then Pathway F, It's for anybody who's a current CPPO or CPPB, or your expiration date has to be within 1 year of your NIGP-CPP application date.
So what we found, Diane, is that for individuals that do not have a post-secondary diploma under Pathway E, they actually come in under Pathway D and get that, because it's OR, they get that Public Procurement Associate designation. And NIGP kind of offers that periodically throughout the year. Sometimes we consider it to be a boot camp. That program probably runs, depending upon when you take it, about 2 to 3 months. And so if you more concentrated, but if you get that associate designation, you literally have taken 2 years of eligibility off the list. Otherwise, you would come in under the Pathway E. So it's an option again. These are all about options for you. What works best for you, right?
Right. The practice analysis showed that there are many, many different levels of education and work experience, and the NIGP-CPP was built around that. So let's, Pathway F, I mentioned that that's only for the CPPOs and Bs. That one, no proof of formal education, no work experience. You're going to complete the online application and upload your current or lapsed within 1 year O or B certificate. Now, the thing to remember with this is only through May 2024, Pathway F candidates are only required to successfully complete exam module B. We call that bridging. We have 2 exam modules. Everybody Pathway A through E already has to successfully complete both of those, but only through May of 2024 will Pathway F just have to successfully complete that 1 exam module. After that, everybody, regardless of where you are, when you applied, what your eligibility pathway was, everybody's going to have to successfully complete both. So, you'll hear me every time you talk to me about anything, I'll mention that just because we don't want anybody caught unaware. All right, so relevant work experience. All relevant work experience for pathways A through E has to be full-time procurement work, public or private, purchaser or seller. It has to be within the past 10 years. So the past 10 years of your application date. So thinking back on Pathway D was 72 months out of 10 years versus Pathway E, 96 months out of 10 years. You can see that there are some advantages to taking a look at other eligibility pathways. You can have multiple job titles, multiple employers, but for every employment experience, we require third-party verification by a supervisor or boss or HR rep. All right, and so this is a picture of the page from the current handbook that is on the website. We explain the work experience, and for the work to be at the mid to executive level, we learned that means you have to perform at least 20 of the 43 technical competencies for each employment experience that you report. That does not mean you do 8 on one, 7 on the other, and then 5, and the 3 jobs add up to 20. It's 20 or more for each separate employment experience. In addition to verifying, the usual agency name, your job title, your starting date, your ending date, you also have to name a specific person from each employment experience who is going to be your employment verifier. You're going to give us their name, their job title at that agency, their email address, and their phone number. We always recommend that you tell people in advance what you're doing, because they will receive an email as soon as you pay the application fee and submit your application. An employment verification email is automatically sent to every verifier that you list. They're going to verify not just your job title, your starting date, and your ending date. They also have to verify that you did perform all of the technical competencies that you identified. So that's a big reason why you want to talk to somebody before they get the employment form, because if they come back and say, no, Joe did not do that, that entire employment experience is now invalid. And when you're looking at the past 10 years, having one big employment experience taken out of the loop because you didn't work with your verifier first, that can be something we don't want you to go through. And all verifications have to be completed before the application can be approved. The handbook explains it much better than I do, so be sure to read the handbook. And the handbook is a must read, which means you must read it before you submit your application. We want to make sure everybody understands.
The
All
power
right.
of the power of this verification process, however, is that you self-assess. So you can go right into the handbook and see all 43 competency statements, and then say, well, no, this job didn't get me to the 20. And in fact, when you go and do your application, it really is it's a digital. You're gonna click which of those at least 20 that you have done. So rather than getting our heads wrapped around a job title that may not necessarily say what we actually do on the job, you're doing the self-assessment. But to Diane's point, though, make sure that your verifier also agrees that you did that work, because it really would be a shame if you put in 4 years under this title and the verifier comes back and says, nah, I don't think that happened. But Diane, one thing that we haven't talked about is who could be the verifier?
Oh, the verifier has to be boss, supervisor, HR rep. We can't take generic information. We've had individuals put on the application, call my company and find someone. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. You have to name an individual. So what about your boss moved and is with another company, or your boss has retired? They do not still have to be employed at that agency. You just have to be able to give us the name, the title while they were at the agency, and their current email contact information. So it's not unusual at all for a boss or a supervisor to have moved on to a different organization. But Rick is right. It does put the onus on the applicant. I'm a certification professional, so I am not well-versed in the many different job titles there are. In fact, it amazes me when I go through applications and take a look at the assessments, the technical competencies that people are doing in all these different jobs. Even, they might have the same job title, but they do completely different work. So it does put the onus on you, but it also gives you the power. You are the one that is assessing your own employment. You identify your verifier, and the application automatically sends the verification email out. They respond back that exact same way, and there we go. And that is the only way we can verify employment, because we are applying for the ANSI accreditation through ANAB. Every person has to follow the exact same policy. So read the handbook. It's not nearly as scary as I think I might be making it sound.
And third party verification is a ANSI standard, isn't it?
It is definitely a standard that everything on the application has to be verified through a third party. So with your education, you're not just going to tell us what education you have. You're going to have to upload your diploma or a transcript that shows the date the degree was conferred and the degree that was conferred. So everything on your application has to be verified. If you're applying under Pathway F for the CPPO or the CPPB, you have to upload your certificate, or we will accept a copy of your database record from UPPCC. So everything on the application has to be verified.
So Diane, this is kind of a quiet crew because I don't have any questions in the chat or the Q&A box. As Justin mentioned earlier, please submit any questions you have. We stop for Q&A throughout the webinar. So don't be afraid to ask the question, because I'm sure if you have a question someone else is probably going to have it as well. So Kimberly, I just see reading yours, does full-time work experience mean 30 plus hours? Diane, can you respond to that?
Well, it has to be a full-time procurement work experience. So whatever your agency defines as full-time. The Certification Commission had big discussions about all of that. And some agencies, their full-time employees are 35 hours, some are 40. So it has to be deemed a full-time procurement position by your agency.
So, you know, a lot of times, and Kimberly's asking kind of a second question there.
Right.
A lot of times you're doing procurement, but you're also maybe doing something else.
That's a challenge, definitely, because this is the work experience is full-time procurement. We've had some individuals contact us who are, for example, store managers, and a small portion of their job is procurement, but everything else, you know, their 95% of their job is being a store manager. That does not qualify. It needs to be a full-time procurement position. And you'll find when you take a look at the 43 technical competencies, to have 20 or more would require, that was what shook out of the practice analysis survey. It has to be full-time procurement, and it has to be at the mid to executive level with the 20 or more. So if your job is only part-time procurement, that would not qualify.
Because you'll have a hard time getting to the 20 in
Right,
that case.
right.
You're a store
And-
manager who does a little bit of procurement, but mostly does, you know, warehousing and inventory
Mhm.
controls. Yeah, you'll see as you look through the list on the competency statements that you're going to have a hard time getting to that 20. So
Okay. Somebody asked about will a generic HR rep or office? No, you're going to need to give us the name of a specific HR rep. You can't just give us generic HR@blah.com. So what you would need to do is contact your agency, the agency you work for, and that is part of identifying your employment verifier. You'll need to connect with them and find out who can do that for you at that agency. And again, it's not just the starting date and ending date, but also the technical competencies have to be verified too. So that's another big reason why we strongly recommend that you identify this specific, well, you have to identify this specific person. It's always a shame when someone comes back to us and they've not contacted anybody, and an HR person comes back and says, we're not going to do this. Well, we can't respond back to the HR person. We have confidentiality policies. We can only speak one-on-one with the candidate. So then we have to go to the candidate and say, this is what your agency said, you need to work directly with them. So that's going to be, part of the background work to get your employment experiences locked down.
Right. But Chris asked, is a HR rep going to suffice, which is absolutely would suffice.
Sure. As long as you're going to view everything, it's perfectly fine. And then other documentations for pathways A through D, you will have to provide your diploma or a transcript, and we can only accept the transcript if it shows the degree conferred and the date conferred. For pathway B, you're going to have to prove your bachelor's or higher and a copy of your graduate level certificate from the college or university. For E, there are no documents. That is the one without any college degree required, post-secondary college. You're just going to do all employment verification. Pathway F, you're going to upload your O or B certificate. The only other document that you would need is if you are going to request special accommodations, there's a form, and we'll be talking about that in a minute too.
Right. Okay, so let's go to that second question then.
And I want to say thank you to the person who said that they did the application a few weeks ago, and it was a great, easy process. Woo,
Yeah, thanks, Timothy.
Yes. All right. So now we're going to talk about how do I apply. So you want to confirm that you're eligible. You want to confirm that your work experience, each one aligns with 20 or more competency statements. Pathway F, you're exempt. You want to confirm your supervisors or HR rep will verify this. And then you want to be prepared to make payment for the application. All right. So here's some cool things. We have no set deadlines, no late fees. You apply online. We do close registration and payment 30 days prior to the desired testing period. And we have that clearly marked on the website, and we tell you in the emails you get from us. If you require special accommodations, there's a form for you. You want to gather and have your diplomas and certificates ready. And once you get your application complete, you're going to pay the fee. So now let's talk about fees. The application fee is $150 and it's non-refundable. So as a part of your application, you will sign candidate declarations. And the second declaration is that you've read the entire handbook. The handbook explains non-refundable. It also explains eligibility. So you want to be sure you've got your verifiers and you want to make sure you've got your application locked down before you submit it. The exam fee is $100 testing fee for each exam module, and we have 2 exam modules, and your application is valid for 2 years from the approval date. And we'll send you an email telling you that your application is approved, and you have 2 years from that date to complete all the exam requirements. All right, special accommodations, the NIGP-CPP and our testing vendor. We follow all Americans with Disabilities Act and similar acts in other countries. So if you need special accommodations, we are there for you. You want to allow additional time to process your application. So I would give us, 2 months before the testing window. Don't wait until the last minute. And then there is a specific request for special accommodations form that you're going to print and provide your licensed healthcare professional. That is included as an appendix at the back of the handbook, or you could send me an email and I can send it straight to you directly, whatever is easier. And on that form, your healthcare professional is going to provide the diagnosis, recommend an accommodation or accommodations, plural, and then they have to have seen you at least 1 year before your application date. Now, this is private healthcare information. The only person who sees that is me. When you answer, everyone answers on the application, are you requesting special accommodations, yes or no? If you say no, your application goes on. If you say yes, your application stops, and I am the person that reviews it. I'm the only one that will see your medical or learning diagnoses. I will determine what accommodations we can approve, and then I tell Pearson VUE what the accommodations are, but not why. So we are very cognizant of private information. I also mentioned we won't talk to anybody but the candidate directly. So we have firewalls everywhere. All right, scheduling your appointment. So once your application's approved, you're going to get an email telling you it's approved, and then you're going to register for a testing window and pay the testing fee. We have 4 full month testing windows each year: February, May, August, and November. Once your payment's received, then within, I think it's 24 to 48 hours, you're going to get an authorization to test email from Pearson VUE, and it's going to give you specific instructions on accessing the Pearson VUE appointment system so you can schedule a specific date and center for your appointment. The only person that has access to your Pearson VUE account is you. So I can't help you with appointment scheduling or appointment canceling, but you do that directly through Pearson VUE. And then all testing takes place at Pearson VUE testing centers throughout North America and globally. We rolled this certification out during right at the beginning of the pandemic, and everyone has tested at a testing center. And that is because there are not yet established accepted standards for remote proctoring and online testing. The NIGP-CPP has been waiting for those standards to be put in place before the commission considers that. So everyone has taken their test at a testing center. All right, but life happens. You schedule an appointment, but you can't take your exam on that date. I mentioned that you have your own Pearson VUE record or account. You're going to cancel your appointment online the same way you schedule it. The big thing to remember is you have to do this at least 24 hours before your appointment date and time. And then you'll be able to reschedule within that same testing window without a fee. But if you don't cancel with more than 24 hours notice and it's a non-emergency, or you just miss your appointment, the entire $100 testing fee is forfeited, and you would have to pay a new $100 testing fee to register to test again. Pearson VUE charges us $100 for every late cancellation and missed appointments, and that fee is paid by the candidate's testing fee. But if you have a medical or family emergency less than 12 hours before your appointment date and time, contact me and I will let you know what documentation we would need to ask Pearson VUE to consider a fee waiver. There's only 7 days for you to provide that documentation to me. So this is why I'm readily available and my teammate Logan is readily available. You can reach us anytime and we will help you. Life happens. And then if for some reason you cancel your appointment and you need to transfer to a future window, there's a $50 transfer fee. All right, so we have two exam modules. The cool thing about a modular exam is Module A and Module B are tested separately. You can choose to, if you're a pathway A through E candidate, you could choose to take Module A first, or maybe you want to take Module B first, or maybe you want to take both during the same testing window. You can schedule 2 appointments if they're available, one for A in the morning, one for B in the afternoon, or maybe one earlier in the window, one later in the window. It's up to you, complete flexibility. And if you're not successful, then you would retest only on the unsuccessful module. That does not mean that we're only going to give you the questions you missed on a retest. You're going to retest on that entire module again. You can only test on each module once during any testing window. So you would have to wait and register for a retest in a future window. And then the reexamination fee is the $100 testing fee. That is what we are charged for each test that is given to our candidate, and we charge that exact same fee to you. And then you have 3 opportunities to pass each module within the 2-year application period. All right, do we have any questions?
I've been trying to capture them as we go through. I did one on a Q&A, so I think we can move forward, Diane.
Okay, great. Well, that is going to take us to preparation, which 61% of you are very, very interested in. Rick, I'm going to turn it to you.
Okay, so this is where Diane and her team, because they're running the certification, they cannot help you prepare for the exam. There is no sharing, absolutely zero sharing of what is on the exam with the individuals who prepare you. So one of the things that's important to mention on preparation is that everyone universally, if you go into the handbook, you're going to find out what are the technical competencies that are built in the exam. But when you take a prep course through NIGP or from whomever, you're not going to see the exact same exam questions. Now, oftentimes we kind of hear that comment. Hey, listen, I took the prep course and that question was not on the exam. Well, it's not going to be on the exam because we're not sharing that information. But there is a framework that's going to help you with that. So two things that are really, really important is you want to know the exam content, which we're going to talk about here. And then what are your options to prepare? As Tracy had mentioned, she not only just did one study group, she did multiples, and she also did the prep guide. So lots of options that are available to you, just like there's options on credentialing and certificates and certification. People learn differently on how they prepare. And so we'll go over all those. So let's talk about how do you know the exam content. Again, as I mentioned earlier, 43 specific competency statements. They come from the Public Procurement Competency Framework, that same framework that does everything in Pathways. And it's not smoke and mirrors. You go right into the Certification Handbook. You will see the list of those 43 competency statements. They're the same competency statements that you identify your eligibility, the 20 of the 43. So it's very, very clear and transparent about how it's going to be covered. Weighted percentages, that's based on the practice analysis. So I want to make clear, and we're going to show you on a graph, a seventh of the exam doesn't come from strategy, and a seventh comes from leadership. It really is the practice analysis survey that informs us. And then I really want to emphasize this third area. For every competency, the exam questions are written to address real world scenarios. So it's going to say, hey, listen, here's the situation with your mayor or a school business official or whatever. And it's going to outline that scenario. And then you're going to be asked to apply your knowledge of public procurement to that experience to determine, and look at the keyword here, the best course of action or solution. Think back about methods of source selection. There's a variety of ways in which you could do it. You could do a formal sealed bid. You could do a request for qualifications. You could do an RFP. They all are right. They're all sources that you can use, methods you can use to do a solicitation. But what's the best given the scenario? And that's what a scenario-based, competency-based exam is going to focus in on. So make sure that you think of it in terms of not only knowledge, but how you apply the knowledge to the scenario. So here's some examples of what a competency-based or technical competency would look like. We're pulling from the leadership focus area. And again, all 43 are on the Certification Handbook. So when we think about leadership, we think about how do you create and foster a professional ethical culture, or a system of continuous improvement, or professional development opportunities. How do you engage your stakeholders, both internal stakeholders, maybe your user departments, and external relationships to elevate procurement experience? And how does procurement align with the entity goals and impacts on that? So again, those are some examples of what a competency-based statement would look like. Now, Diane mentioned it's a two-part modular exam. There's an A and B. The reason why that was developed that way is to give you a lot of flexibility. Diane mentioned you could take both modules at the same time, or just one module in a single setting. So if you're like me, hopefully not, but if you're like me and you are not a really good test taker, I would much prefer to focus in on one of those modules first, study for that module, and then take the exam, pass it, and then move to the next module. By the way, there's a lot of flexibility. You could take B, then A. You could take A, then B. It's really up to you and how you want to do that. Remember, you can take each module up to 3 times over the period of your application, which is 2 years. So we've seen people that would say, hey, listen, on the first of the month at 8 a.m., I'm going to take one of the modules, I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to come back and take the second module at 1 p.m. Or I could do module A on the first of the month and module B on the last day of the month. Or I could shift them. I can say November, I'm going to take this module, and then I can take the second module in February. It's really about how do you prepare best. The other power of this is that because it's a modular exam, each one is scored independently. So a lot of time with certification programs, you take one exam And if you miss, you know, 1 or 2 questions on it, you have to take the entire exam over again. What you do here is that you would have to take over the module that you weren't successful with. So if you get a passing score on module B, all you have to do, let's say you weren't successful with module A, you just take module A over again. Each module, 80 multiple choice questions. Each exam module is 2 hours. One thing that I want to mention here, because, you know, do you think is 80 multiple choice, can you do that in 2 hours? Actually, most of our vast majority of the people that we've talked to said yes. But here's a test taking technique that is, I don't know if it's particularly unique to the Pearson view way of doing the test in the testing centers. But because it's a computer-based exam, you can, as you're going through the questions, you can actually flag questions. And in my personal experience, I flagged quite a few of the questions. I wasn't really sure whether I got the best answer. You usually have plenty of opportunity. Once you finish all 80 questions, you can go back and look at the ones that you flagged and go back and say, let me think about that again. Usually you're going to have, you know, a lot of time to finish the exam. But again, that modular exam opportunity gives you a lot of flexibility, and it doesn't, you know, penalize for the scoring, because if you're strong in one area, not so strong in another, you only have to take that one module a second time. Now, I mentioned that that the practice analysis identifies how many technical competency statements are in each exam. You can see there's the 43 technical competencies on the basis of the comprehensive exam. And you see it basically breaks down about 50-50. About 20 of the 43 are Module A, another 23 in Module B. Now, the reason why you have the bridge exam is we did a significant kind of a cross tab on the CPPO and the CPB exam. And we said, hey, listen, you've already received your certification, and therefore you don't need to retake those areas again. So you're only focusing on those elements that you haven't been tested in the O's and B's. That's why the purposes of the bridge exam. But keep in mind, as Diane told you, that's only available through May of 2024. But you can see how this breaks down differently, or let's look at it from a pie chart. So look at the differences between Module A and Module B. With Module A focused 61%, you know, about 2/3 of the questions are on procurement techniques. But when I switch over into Module B, 72% is focused on leadership, business continuity, and strategy. And that actually helps you as you prepare for the exam. You know, maybe you're really, really sharp on procurement technologies, and so you want to get Module A out of the way first, and then come back and then focus in on those leadership and business continuity. So the other issue that we provide for you is that what we call immediate test results. You walk into the testing center, you sit for the exam. The proctor, after you leave, the proctor will hand you a piece of paper, and it's going to say whether you were successful or unsuccessful on the spot. So rather than lamenting, you know, geez, did I do good or not? You're going to know as you walk out of that testing center. Now, let's talk about how do you prepare, because there's a variety of ways. Not everyone kind of takes it a little bit differently. Let's talk first about the digital prep guide, because some candidates don't only have to take a Module B. We have broken out the prep guide by module. So there's one prep guide for Module A, there's a second prep module for Module B, and then you can acquire those, purchase those online from the NIGP store. It's $45 per module. Listen, you've got a colleague that already sat for the exam. Use theirs. The idea is not to, you know, this is not a moneymaker at all. This is about providing an opportunity for leaders to be recognized through the CPP program. So if you're borrowing from other folks, hey, more power to you. But the prep guides are available to you, and then we update them very, very frequently as we really think about ways in which people prepare for the exam. Now, some folks really would prefer to be with an instructor led. Now, so this is still a virtual, so you're not going to a site, although a couple of chapters have done that. So it's a virtual, and it's usually offered about 2 months before every test period. If you want to do the comprehensive, because you have to take both module A and B, that's a kind of a 4-week course. It's $395. It includes, by the way, don't buy the prep guide, don't buy the assessment, because it's included in the fee for the prep course. And there is a bridge that's only 2 weeks, and you can see that that's a lower price. If you take these prep courses and you're not successful, you can repeat it once complimentary if you're unsuccessful in it. But it is it's an opportunity for you to do some self-assessment. The instructor will have periodic reviews where the entire team comes together. You vet out some questions, you do some practice exams. That's available for you. And then that instructor also has kind of like what we'd identify as instructor hours, where you can just go right to the instructor and say, listen, I'm stuck on critical thinking. What do you think I should do with this? So that's an option that's available for you. But again, you're going to do the virtual prep. Remember that you don't need to buy the prep guides, because they're going to be part of that process. One tool that folks have really focused in on is the online self-assessment. So what this does is it provides you kind of an insight on where your expertise is before you sit for the exam. Again, these are broken down by module, so you can buy it by module. It's $49. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to walk you through 75 questions per module based on those competency statements. And so each question is going to be tailored similarly, not exactly, but similarly on the exam. In other words, they're going to be scenario-based questions. And as you answer a question, it's going to give you that immediate feedback. It's going to say if you were right or if you were wrong or why. The other nice part about it is once you finish with the 75 questions, oh, by the way, you don't need to take that all at one setting. So let's say you open up the self-assessment, you take 20, and then you're going to go to dinner or take care of the kids or whatever the case may be. You can come back and start with question 21. So it doesn't have to do it in one setting. But the nice thing about the self-assessment is at the end, when you finish, it gives you a customized report. It's going to tell you where your strengths and where your weaknesses are. And it's going to give you a list of pathways courses that may help you develop those competencies a little bit stronger. And then if I shift back to the left side of the screen, you'll notice that the $49 is really a discount to buy those additional courses if you wish to do that. So it could end up being free for the self-assessment if in fact you want to identify some classes. Now, here's what folks have said. Because you could take the assessment up to 4 times, it's different, same questions, but you could take it up to 4 times, is when people are coming in and saying, listen, I think I'm going to take the exam in February. You would take the self-assessment. By the way, you can take the self-assessment before you even apply. That's fine. There's not a kind of an order here. Again, a lot of flexibility. But you'll sit and take that assessment, and you'll immediately know, hey, listen, you knocked it out of the ballpark when it comes to methods of source selection. But critical thinking may be a little bit of a challenge for you, or the sustainability may be a little bit of a challenge. You can begin to hone in on those areas where you need to kind of develop your competencies. So we've really heard that this was a really nice tool to help you with the process. Then study groups, and Tracy had mentioned this, NIGP through the Insight community. This is a free member benefit if you want to sign up. We do those about 2 months in advance. So we have co-facilitators who have given their time to help with a study group, and every study group is a little bit different because they want to focus in on different things. So the study group for November is going on now. About 2 months out, we'll do one for February. 2 months out, we'll do one for May. So that's an option for you. And then our friend David Nash has done a question of the day. He's done that for the UPPCC and the CPPO and the B, and he also has a question of the day for the CPP as well. So lots of ways in which you can prepare. If I didn't answer all the questions, put something in the chat or give me a call. We'll get you in contact with our content team and they will help you with it. A lot of flexibility. It's really based on how you want to prepare. Lots of tools that are available for you. So Diane, let's go to the 5th question.
All right, recertification. Well, to earn and attain the NIGP-CPP, it has to be because you can successfully complete the competency-based exam, the situational exam about the work that a procurement leader does on the job. So as a result, the only ways to earn the recertification continuing hours are through continuing education. So you get 1 hour for each contact hour, 60 minutes of continuing education learning. So you have to earn a minimum of 36, but 9 of those 36 hours can be earned by developing, teaching, or instructing public procurement content. So this is a peer review of recertification along with, along the lines of the ANSI standards for certification programs. So it's all about the continuing education. And then once you've earned the NIGP-CPP, as long as you are a current NIGP-CPP and you retire fully from the profession, then you could request the retired status once you're fully retired. You recertify every 3 years and the fee is $125.
Okay. Diane, you've been fast fingers on the keyboard. You've answered all the questions. I don't see any more up here. And so let me just do a quick review, and then if you have any last minute questions, we are here for you because we just want to make sure you understand what your options are, both in terms of certification and other credentialing. So 6 optional pathways. Procurement training is not a requisite. It's not to say that you shouldn't have procurement training, because if you don't know things like methods of source selection, you're going to be at a disadvantage. But rather than saying you've got to take 72 hours or 46 hours, there's no training required. This exam is focused not only on the kind of the baseline procurement techniques, but it's a more comprehensive view. It's about leadership. It's about competency. It's what you do every day in the workplace. So it's going to focus in on those areas. It's a modular exam, 80 questions each. There's 2 parts. You also have 4 testing windows. You can choose the entire months of February, May, August, or November. Really a lot of flexibility for you on that as well. 3 opportunities to pass and immediate notification. Fees valid for 2 years is the application of $150. Each module is $100 and each re-exam is $100. That's actually just a pass through because that's the amount of money that we pay, or the fee that we pay to Pearson VUE to set up the exam. And then recertification, 3 years, 36 contact hours, $125. So Gail, thanks to ask the question. Boss told you that hours are required before tasting the test. That is not true for this certification. When the Certification Commission looked at that, they felt as though people were working to try to get the 72 hours wherever they got them, rather than being more intentional about where you develop. Now, most certification programs, I'm very familiar with what the UPPCC offers because I'm a proud CPPO and a B as an officer and a buyer. The UPPCC does require training hours as eligibility, but the NIGP certification does not. So it's true for some, but it's not true in this particular case. So with that, Diane, we're just going to wrap it up. Lots of information that is available for you on the NIGP website. There is a specific tab on certification. Look at that. But more importantly, if you've got a question on how to prepare, you can contact me, or you can contact our customer care team. They will put you in contact with the folks that know. And if you have any questions related specifically to certification, eligibility, testing, accommodations, that's all going to be a Diane issue. You know, I began this by saying, what is your pathway from here? And I think this is absolutely critical, particularly as we think about the disruptions that are happening in the workplace as it relates to talent. You really need to know where the pathway that you want to go from here, as Lewis Carroll said, with the Alice in Wonderland. And I kind of look back at C.S. Lewis and his work, and what he says in this particular story is, you can't go back, and you really can't change the beginning. But today you could start to think about what your ending is. As Tracy said, she never even thought about being in public procurement, much less a manager. And look where her journey has taken her. She's very excited about, going through the process of getting certification, getting her credentials. She really wants to see her career blossom. She wants to be the Nathan Dow in another organization at some point in her career. So really, I challenge you to think about where your career is going. This is a prime time to be in public procurement because there's so much fewer of us and so much demand. And so, but part of it is you're going to have to invest in yourself. It's really important to invest on your education and to think about how certification opens up doors for you, as Tracy had said. So thanks so much for being with us this afternoon. Hopefully we provided you some information that's really important as you kind of make a decisions. There's our email addresses that are on there, and please reach out to us. Thank you very much for being with us today. And Justin, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Rick, Diane, Tracy, and our audience for the great questions. Please take time to fill out the evaluation survey. Once we end the webinar, you'll receive a prompt to take that. Both the recording and survey links will also be emailed to you later this afternoon. Thanks again and have a great day.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, y'all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.